I think
Good
that's it.
stuff.
I think I'm ready. I'm ready.
Nice one, mate. Well, cheers for jumping on. I appreciate you're a busy guy.
No, that's fine. No, apologies taking a bit longer, but yeah, Euros coming up, podcast returning, so to speak. So yeah, it's been pretty busy, but yeah, all good, all good. I think when obviously I knew about you before I knew Tommy really well or knew of the podcast because I was just like, what a great name that is. What a great name.
Yeah, kind of started with the name and worked backwards, really.
That's pretty good. That's pretty much what we did with Mundial, actually, not too far away.
Okay, well, with the magazine.
Yeah. The magazine. Well, we wanted to do a magazine. First thing we came up with was the name, and then the rest sort of went from there, and that was 10 years ago. So yeah, still
Yes.
doing it, but yeah. Start with a good name, you're onto a good thing, aren't you? So
No,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I suppose a bit of background then.
Yeah.
Like what were you doing 10 years ago before you got into this?
10 years ago, oh blimey. And it is 10 years ago. I was producer, and I was producer in sports documentaries, but mainly football, but I did a lot
All
of other
right.
sports. So um, I pretty much had arguably what many people will consider a dream job, just going around interviewing footballers and standing by the side of pitches and watching football at extremely close quarters. Which if you told me when I was a kid back in the late 80s, early 90s, I would have laughed at you. But I suppose the passion for the game then came through to want to do something else. I'd done print magazines before, Yeovil Town fanzine in terms of football. Did one called Stand, which was all about like modern football, which is very much fanzine style. And I thought I enjoyed doing that. But what it got a bit depressing talking about all the bad stuff in the game because it was all about the against modern football, or at least the bad things of modern football. Football was still and is still really good, but there are some things that are creeping in or have crept in that aren't aren't ideal, I would say. But um, we enjoyed talking so much about the good stuff of football. We thought we'd maybe do a magazine about that, which is what Mundial became. And the tagline didn't start off as a tagline, but reminding you why I love football, and the name of our now podcast is probably the best way to sum up Mundial, and what we do, whether that be in print podcast, or documentary podcast, or various videos that we've done. And over the 10 years, we've got um, bigger and better. Not saying it was easy, but it wasn't easy for anyone, especially during COVID, running their own business. But now we've got a bit more freedom because we're owned by a company called Football Co. And we've got the freedom and the resources to tell the stories that we have always told, but with a bit more, well, time, money, and energy, should we say?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, print media is not easy, is it? So, but it sounds
No.
like you already had the contacts to kind of make it work.
Yeah, I think print media is not easy, and you have to diversify to. Sounds a bit LinkedIn, I know. Apologies. You have to
Moment.
diversify to sustain yourself and increase doing what you're doing and do things that you're doing better. So we worked in videos, we did podcast series for Spotify, um, and did various videos, various publications, various events, all sorts of things really for different brands in and around football. So, it was yeah, it was like I said, it's not the easiest thing to run your own business, but then there are obviously a number of rewards. And yeah, we sort of, unfortunately, like everyone else, we COVID came along and changed the landscape dramatically, and but we managed to just about keep our heads above water and push on. But yeah, it's if anyone's sitting there thinking, I mean, and one of the beautiful things actually in the 10 years that we've been doing Mundial is it was happening before that. I'm not saying Mundial was was the um was the precursor to all this, but print magazine and print media is still around. It's in a different format. It feels more luxury, more niche, and it's more expensive. It's £15 to buy a copy of our magazine, much cheaper if you subscribe. But these are the things, the love and care and attention that goes into all these things are worth it, and well, I certainly think are worth it. And the growth of print media still in the digital age, and the importance of print media in the digital age is, well, I think it's extremely important still. it has its time and place. Podcasts again have helped facilitate that and also run alongside it. So yeah, I think whilst we live in a digital age, I think there's very much room for a nice looking, nice smelling, nicely designed print publication of whatever you like, whatever your niche in or niche or not niche interest is.
Yeah, yeah, cool. Well, I was catching up with the podcast as well because Tommy recommended
Yeah.
um the Billy White's episode, so I was enjoying that.
Yeah,
That
that
was
was
good.
yeah. I mean, again, I think what we wanted to do we've been asked or not asked. Well, we have been asked. We were asked or told that we should do a podcast, a weekly, a regular football podcast. But we were like, well, we listened to all the good ones already, the Football Rambles, the Guardian Football Weeklies, and the like, and they're so good. What are we adding to that space? What are we adding to that space? So it was important when we did eventually decide to do a more regular thing, mainly to keep us in people's thoughts, eye lines, attention spans, whatever, which are shorter than ever. Doing a quarterly magazine and social as and when isn't always keeping you, in tied in with the people that like you the most or people that new followers and new fans. So the idea of the podcast was so that there was a regular touch point really for people to experience Mundial, whatever it is. So I think that was the key thing to do in doing the podcast and reminding you why I love football. One of the best, all the reviews we get and the good reviews we get are like it does what it says on the tin,
Yeah, yeah, I got that vibe from it, yeah.
which is exactly what we want to do. Like I said, there's loads of different things. There's so much football out there, and there's so many different ways of covering it. What do we want to do? We just want to remind people of all the best things about football, and that isn't always at the top. It isn't always at the bottom, and it can sometimes be in the middle. It can be all three of those things, whether you play it, whether you watch it, whether you interact with things and the culture around it. Dare I say, fashion, certainly music. Music is a massive, massive thing in football, not just from the songs that are on the terraces, from the incredible songs that have been made, around in and around football and people who love football. We were talking about this week's podcast. What were we talking about? Elton John being Watford chairman, for example. Now, I know it might be the first time that Elton John's been mentioned on this podcast, but what it goes to show is that football and the culture around football is a very is huge, varied, and sometimes those things cross over with fashion, music, all sorts of things. So it's yeah, it's like I said, there's a lot of football to go around, and we feel like we've got a particular area of football and people like us, old and new. I'm glad that we're not just talking to people just like me. It's nice that some of the younger generation. Again, I hate to sound like an old man, but it's true. I am an old man. The younger generation are experiencing football in a completely different way, but they're also seeing that football is more important than just what happens on the pitch. It is the fashion, it is the music, it is going on holiday with your mates or with, if you go on a holiday with your partner and you go and watch a game of football while you're there. Football is it's all around us, it's everywhere, and there's so many ways you can absorb it. And I think Mundial is the home or a home, not the home, not just the home, is a home for people to express their joy and feelings and romance around the game.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned Yeovil. Is that your team then?
Yeah. Long, complicated story. There's a podcast somewhere, and I won't bore everyone with the same old story. And Tommy will be listening to this, going, "Oh, for God's sake, he's talking about Yeovil again." I
So you're not
should
from
say,
there then?
yeah, I am from.
Oh, right, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But ownership stuff got complicated and fell
Right,
out. But
okay.
for those who don't know, Tommy is the producer of our podcast and also a very well, a music man. He's in his own band for God's sake, which and a
Well, yeah,
very
he
good one at that.
co-presents some of my episodes as well on
Exactly. There you
Patreon. So
are.
yeah.
There you are. So yeah. So Yeovil Town, born and bred, up and down. Sometimes you fall out of love with your loves, but your first love you always stay.
Yeah, yeah.
Somehow connected to them, and yeah. It is that way at the moment. But yeah, I'll be honest. I'll go and watch all sorts, and my daughter's into the football now, so I'll go and watch a lot of women's football. I live down the road from Chelsea women's, so
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
very easy to yeah, get carried away and enjoy what football, highs and lows. That's because even Chelsea, as good as they are, have experienced the lows of recent times. But
Yeah.
I will be watching football one way or another most weekends, and especially this time of the year, most evenings. And in between all that, I'm going to gigs or listening to music.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because I had probably, well, definitely one of, if not the best away day ever at Yeovil with Hull.
When
With
you won the league.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
Ian Ashby
yeah.
top
Ian
corner.
Ashby. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
These
great
are the stupid
memories.
things that we say stupid things. It's not stupid to you. It's not stupid to me either. But these are the daft things that I remember. Ian Ashby. Was he the player that played in every division or something? Or
Yeah, well, he
yeah,
captained us in every division. Yeah.
that's it, captain. There you are, see. But I can remember things like this, but I will not be able to remember what the missus asked me to get from the shop on the way home and stuff like that. But that is the joy and beauty of football.
Well, yeah,
So
because that was like our first promotion in about 20 years or something.
yeah,
It was
yeah,
like the
yeah.
beginning of the rise to the Premier League. Yeah.
I've still not done the KC Stadium. It's not called that anymore. Maybe is it still called that? I
Yeah,
don't even know.
it's the same company. It's just called the KCOM now.
KCOM, yeah. I haven't. One of the few I haven't done in this country. So I will have to do it at some point because,
Fair enough.
yeah, the list is diminishing on the ones that I need to do. But
It's got the
yes,
best scran in the country, apparently. I one of. That's a big thing now, isn't it? Footy
30
scran.
grand, yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, again, this is the success of something like that is. Do you know what the best thing about that is not just it highlights the good stuff, it highlights the really rubbish, awful food that football fans have had to put up with for ages, and it almost now shames football clubs into action to not continuously serve up substandard fare, charge a fortune. So things like that, it's part of football culture, eating at the match, whether that is inside the stadium, outside the stadium. Um, so I think like 30 scran and things like that, it's brilliant because it actually makes people experience football in a different way. It makes the people in charge of football, I'm trying to think of the word, makes people in charge of football actually take care and take responsibility because you have to. Social media now, if you put an awful burger out at a football match, that'll be on Twitter within 5 minutes, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
you will be shamed. So I think I actually think it's a good thing, stuff like that, and it's great. Again, it's another part of football culture. There's plenty of football and there's plenty of football culture to go around, but yeah, we've done a bit of work with them, and fair play to them. They've definitely improved things and actually created some and told some really great stories as well.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if Hull have gone too far now because they're doing apple crumble and custard. It's like,
Yeah,
come on.
oh,
It's got to be a
really?
limit.
Oh no, I quite like the sound of that. I quite like. Oh God, yeah. Oh, I had a pot noodle at the match for the first time
Oh, really?
in ever. I mean, I think because it was a women's football match, then obviously the sensibilities and the atmosphere and the fandom around that side of the game is, shall we say, not tainted with all the decades of history and partisanship that the men's game has had. Of course, I'm not saying for a second that women's football isn't passionate and isn't. It is, but yeah, think the rules are a little bit more loose. And people don't take the Mickey so much as well. But yeah, so for that reason, I had a pot noodle at West Ham versus Chelsea, and yeah, and heaven forbid I didn't throw it on the pitch at anyone. So maybe there's a lesson there for when Dagenham and Redbridge play at the very same ground the next day. But yeah, like I said, there's a lot of complicated history in football. Some of which we will talk about and not be shy of talking about in MUNDIAL, but also, you know, be truthful. I think we had an article once about an ultra from Panathinaikos, and it was the sister of the ultra, and there was, ultras, some ultras will indulge in various things that certainly not everyone else would, but at the same time, there's a level in the storytelling and the history and actually it's just what happened. It doesn't make it good or bad or makes it a bit of both those things. But the point is, in the same way with everything around football, it's a complicated history, but it's a massive history and importance nonetheless.
Yeah, yeah. Well, quickly, if it can be quickly, where do you stand on pitch invasions? Because
Pitch invasions.
hot topic at the minute, yeah.
Yeah, I think they're absolutely fine.
Yeah, I
What I
agree.
don't understand is, and I mentioned this on the podcast once, And actually, one of the most fed back bits of the podcast where I talked about doing a pitch invasion with my granddad, who was very old at the time, and we both managed to drink probably too much before the game than we probably should have done. He was on medication. I was just drinking too much cider. But pitch invasions, when they're done celebratory, I don't know. When they're done in a positive way, why it's just that's what football's about.
Yeah, I
That's
agree
what,
totally. Yeah.
but again, probably touching on what a little bit I said before, some people use that as an excuse to,
Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah. There's
you
always
know,
a
and
nuance to it, but
yeah,
overall, it's a positive thing. Yeah.
look at those Ipswich. The joy of there's too much joy, and again, without getting too deep and too football heavy, there's too much joy being sucked out of football for different reasons. I hate VAR, for example, hate it.
Yeah.
Takes away the very best part of football for me. Second guessing whether you can celebrate, and that for me is the purest bit of football. There's enough joy being sucked out of football. We've got to enjoy the actual joy when it does come around. And teams like Ipswich and whoever does a pitch invasion, there'll be reasons, and people will love it. And I've watched football all around the world at numerous things and been part of working in football. So I've actually been on the pitch after games or stuff like this. Very rare you actually get to go on the actual pitch, and it's quite
Yeah.
nice. It's got yeah, slippier than you actually think as well. Yeah, there's a reason why they wear studs and stuff like that. But no, I think
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it's crack on. Just ignore the away fans and ignore the police and ignore the stewards and enjoy yourself. That's what I would say for pitch invasions.
No, definitely. Anyway, better crack on to the music, I guess.
Yeah,
So
yeah. It's not called 22 Men Kicking a Ball, otherwise we
not
would
bad
be
though.
yeah, we should do that. Yeah, we should do
Yeah.
that. A music and football podcast. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah. So the 2000s, like, what were you up to? And how old were you at that point? Out of interest.
so I was born in 1980, so I was 20. I actually had 2 years out before going to university. I went to Manchester, and I cannot lie, that was largely because of a band. Um, Yeah, a band from Burnage. Massive Oasis fan. Got absolutely hook, line, and sinkered into it all when they first came out. Remember receiving. It seems a ridiculous thing to say now, but like receiving the single release postcards, um, and you know, just little things like that, which is so different from how people experience music now. But yeah, Select Magazine, Britpop was perfect time for me. 15, 16. Euro 96 in the summer of that 96, I went to Nebworth. That
Wow.
summer,
Okay.
I mean, you can't argue, England nearly winning and should have won the European Championships. A couple of weeks later, watching Oasis at Nebworth. Yes, it was too big. Yes, it was too much. But I can say now, I speak about it all the time, and I can say now that I went to go and see Oasis at Nebworth. I saw them 20 times at least in their time, and were they better? Pretty much everywhere else that I saw them. Maybe not towards the latter years, but you know, Nebworth is iconic, isn't it now?
Yeah, yeah. In terms
And
of how was it better elsewhere? Just the sound or something?
yeah, I think it was just it was too big. I think it might be
Yeah.
different now with technology and stuff like that, but I genuinely think it was. I mean, we were halfway down at Nebworth, and yeah, the stage was because you're at the bottom of the hill, and the stage was a bit. The stage was at the end of a little slope, so it was quite hard to see. But still, it was. Yeah, I went to Nebworth, so I'm
Yeah, it's
never.
probably better
Yeah,
in hindsight,
I
yeah.
I don't like people that say, "Oh, it was shit." It wasn't shit. Was it as good as we all thought it might be? Probably, because I think again, it wasn't. It's a bit like going to the football match. It's not what just happens around. It not what happens in front of you for a certain period of time. It's everything else. It's getting stuck in the car park for 4 hours afterwards, literally not moving. Doing the things that 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds do when they're away from their parents and enjoying the one of the greatest bands there has ever been play an iconic gig. So,
Yeah, yeah.
God,
What was the best Oasis gig you saw then?
the best Oasis gig. Now that is a good question.
Did he do the Familiar to Millions at Wembley?
Yeah, I mean, look, and again, I don't know if it's because you buy these albums and you buy the records and or you then went on to download off LimeShare, BitTorrent, or whatever you want to call it. But I had I remember recording Familiar to Millions and then watching it back loads, somehow making a tape of it off the back of it. And then it was obviously released as a live album. I think again, were they the best musically that night? No. Liam and Noel obviously had a massive falling out of some description, and they're sniping at each other, which you can hear on Familiar to Millions and stuff. But at Wembley Stadium, yeah, you can't really you can yeah. And then I saw them at the new Wembley. Yeah, I think that was probably the one that sticks in my mind the most. But again, that might be just for different reasons.
And I think it's
um,
great when you watch it back, like cigarettes and alcohol, particularly.
yeah,
When Noel starts, that's brilliant.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you know, what's the one? I get someone asked me once, what's the one gig you'd love to have gone to? Now, it would have been either Main Road or Earl's Court. I remember the
Mm.
Earl's Court one being quite a big thing at the time as well. But
Main Road is great. Yeah.
Main Road looks incredible, and the whole Manchester thing as well. And having, then living in Manchester, I can imagine just walking up and around that stadium in the middle of my side. My halls were just the other side of Main Road
Oh,
Stadium.
you'd have been in
So
Manchester at that point then.
no, sorry, I was in Manchester 2001.
Sorry,
So yeah,
right.
a good
Of
five,
course,
6 years.
16. Yeah.
But yeah, sort of then seeing Main Road. I was the last season of Main Road was my first year at uni, and just see you can just only imagine and seeing the pictures, the iconic pictures. So yeah, but that they were my. It felt like okay, I was a lad from Somerset. That they weren't necessarily, there was a difference in my life, and obviously a couple of kids from Burnage. But what I would say is because they were of my time and they were then it just felt like they were your band. And yeah, you go and see them, and then I stood outside Noel's house in London when I was like 17, hoping to see him once, and waited for 5 hours, and some builders came past and went, he's on fucking holiday, you idiots. And we were like, oh well, whatever, Supernova Heights or whatever it is. But it's very much part of growing up, and in the same way that you get into football because of moments and things that happen, specific things that happen, specific games and experiences. Yeah, I mean, Oasis, yeah, and that is was a massive part of my life. And as I got older and had my own money and going to see them wherever I could, and Finsbury Park was good actually. I just remember that now. It was pissing wet
Yeah.
and it was horrible, but Finsbury Park was actually, again, I just remember that being really good. And you know, people get sneery about Oasis and
Mm.
Britpop and the whole thing now, right? And it really annoys me because if it matters to you and you enjoyed it at the time, then it doesn't really matter what other people think now or 20 years, 10, 15 years later. Select some of the bands I listened to during Britpop, select magazines that, oh, Canal, Long Pigs, you know, great band, by the way. There's so many different bands that people might get a bit sniffy at because they were part of that Britpop thing. But at the time, it meant something, and it really did mean something. And I felt it felt like my, you know, my dad told me all stories about him listening to music during punk and stuff like that. It just felt like that for us, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I still think there's, God, I'm sat here now and I've got the Oasis logo and the Verve posters behind me. And one of the proudest, one of the nicest things or the best things about being MUNDIAL is we got to do some work with Brian Cannon, who designed those logos,
Okay.
posters, and things and all that. And like, I was genuinely starstruck when I met him, and I was like, and I think even Brian said to me, it was like, don't worry, I get this I get this, people like being so surprised and stuff like that, but it was fucking great, wasn't it? And I was like, yeah, I mean, he obviously experienced it different. He was in the most incredible like circle that he could have been in around that time. We were a little
Mm.
bit more advanced or away from it, but still recording the tapes off the evening session and stuff like that, and buying every copy of NME. And again, it sounds like a cliche, but it's true. But it was a it was a brilliant time, and there's no doubt about it as well. It helped shape my love for magazines and print as well. NME, Select, um, Melody Maker, all the other ones, and then all them football magazines, 90 Minutes, 442 when it first started. It played a big part of who I am of today, And if someone 20 years later looks back on it and says it says it might be this or it might be that, that's fine. They've got their own opinion. But I think, yeah, I think just, it's just, again, think of the positive and reminding you why it helped, why it made you so happy. And
Yeah.
again, it it is what it is. And again, we'll probably touch on them in a bit, or maybe in a bit, but talk about other bands decade later that some people might describe as indie landfill, for example, which is, again, fine, but the reason they're still being talked about, they must have made a difference somewhere along the line if people are still talking about certain bands or certain songs and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying
Yeah.
every album or everything that came out of it was really good. What I mean is it was really good and important to different people. And I think got
Mm.
people invested in music, and certainly me and loads of others when maybe that didn't necessarily happen in the decade before that. I'm sure it did to a different extent, but certainly the mid 90s was a great time to be 14, 15, 16.
Yeah, I think is it Kevin Bridges who said about Oasis, he kind of attributed being inspired by them for him getting where he did. I think that kind of sums it up. It's like it's not always about the music. Like it's just
No,
such a
no,
inspiration
exactly.
to do what they did.
Doesn't mean everything's amazing about it. Don't get me wrong. I've had some couple of bad experiences at Oasis gigs,
Yeah, what I mean,
Yeah,
I went to one of the last ever gigs actually at Benicassim.
yeah,
I didn't actually go to a proper Oasis gig. Was it? I've heard stuff about the crowd just being insane.
yeah. Just what happens when you get thousands of people together, as the same thing happens at football, sometimes with a little bit too much beer and a little bit of something else, maybe. Uh, the chances are there's going to be some idiots and they're going to do something stupid.
Yeah.
You know, I, and yeah, whether that's whether that's the usual piss being thrown and you or whatever, the same at not just Oasis gigs, but loads of music gigs I've been to, less so now, thankfully. Um, to whether that be, yeah, idiots being idiots, and unfortunately, yeah, sometimes you can be next to the wrong person, and yeah, like in football, you just try and move away from them and try and. But yeah, I don't think it. And don't get me wrong, I listened to a brilliant episode of Steve Lamacq and Joe Worry did a podcast for BBC Sounds about the Britpop, and there was an episode particularly on females in Britpop and how they experienced it. It's not for me to say that there wasn't anything like that or anything. Their experiences are true, and yeah, do you look back? You look back on that era, and it was all part of the. Oh God, I've been to Oasis gigs where Liam's got the fans to sing "Get Your Tits Out" for the lads. Familiar to millions is probably the best example. You know, it's not ideal, of course, it's not. Um, so yeah, don't get me wrong. There were things that weren't great about that whole lad culture, and however, yeah, for those that enjoyed it and did it responsibly, it was a lot of fun. And not on other people. Just yeah, it was just fun. I think that's the thing. That summer of '96, sun was blazing. England were brilliant in the football, and we had Nebworth to look forward to. And yeah, that was a good summer. We knew that, and again, it's cliche, but it is also true. I grew up in a family. My granddad, pretty much everyone's trade union and or works in the NHS. So the hope around the corner that better things were coming in the form of the government and stuff like that. It is a cliche, but it is genuinely true. It is unfortunately, as we well know with hindsight, and things didn't quite pan out the way they probably should have done. And 5 years or 3 years on, 4 years on from an amazing night watching New Labour swing to power there, they're cause protests. Millions are protesting about war, and rightly so. And we've seen what's happened since. But what I'm saying is, it really was a fun, joyful time. There were a couple of yeah awkward things now looking back, but also we shouldn't forget that shouldn't detract from the fact there was a lot of fun being had and good, whole fair fun.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, mate. Well, let's get to your first song. I suppose it's like imagine a similar following to Oasis with the music. And a
Yeah,
brilliant, brilliant song, The People.
Yeah.
Why this particular one?
Why? Because annoyingly, of all the bands and all the gigs I've been to, the music is one band I've never seen live, and
Ah,
I
right.
would put them in my top. Like literally, if I could magic three things, it would probably be going to see Oasis at Main Road or Earl's Court, one of the two. Certainly the Verve at Hay Hall, because I listened to that and on the radio, and again, it's that attachment of that tape that I wore out to death. Um, and then it probably would be the music because I hadn't seen them, and I know I just love the energy of them. I think they sounded like they had a purpose to them as well, and I think it was I just quite like and the name as well, and also little things again. Maybe it touches with what I do at MUNDIAL. The visuals of it, the album cover and stuff like that. It all just fitted in really well actually, and I don't know why or how, despite living in Manchester around that time, so not a million miles away from Leeds, and obviously, I used to go to gigs at the Cockpit all the time. I don't know how, for whatever reason, I just missed going to see them, and even more recently when they came back, it's like holidays and stuff like that. I just didn't. So yeah, and that's probably my favorite song, and also for the music. And it's my favorite the music song is because it strikes a little bit of the people. It just strikes again to the fun and the romance of music and just groups of people. So yeah, I listen to them. Yeah, still loads. They are very very, and even I can't remember his name. I've just forgotten his name. Was it the bassist brought out an instrumental album
Okay.
recently, um, which was amazing. Very different, very different. Can't bloody remember the name recently, but yeah, I think it's a really good, and it gets you going. So that should be the first one up, I would argue.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, well, here it is. Here's the music with the people. Yeah, two of my mates would bang into him, and remember they went to watch Kings of Leon because the music was supporting.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's mad. I just you just don't. And I go to so many gigs year in year out, and I just for whatever reason didn't happen. And it's annoying. And it's one of those things like it's a bit like when you don't go to a football ground that you want that people talk about or went to. Like I never went to Highbury, for
Yeah,
example.
same, yeah.
It really frigging annoys me because I had a chance to go once, and for whatever reason I didn't, foolishly, and then I regret that. So yeah, maybe it's the
Yeah.
completist in me.
Actually, I think I'll correct myself there. I think Kings Leon was supporting the music. That's right.
Oh really? Oh
Yeah,
right.
back in the day.
Adam
Uh,
Nutter, sorry, the Adam Nutter did like an instrumental album recently, which is beautiful and very different, very 43-year-old dad. But I mean that in a good way. It's you can tell that they had musically they were very good. And I think that's reflected in the fact that the guitarist is still making even great, different music, but a different type of music and good music. So yeah.
yeah, yeah, cool. And then the next one, Editors. I don't think
Editors
anyone's picked these so far, but yeah, I mean some great songs.
again probably filled. That's probably the wrong word. Probably slotted in the indie landfill section of various things, but love the first album. The second album, though, for me, and again talking about moments and getting into music, it just was at that time. I was in between jobs, just about trying to find a job, so I had a bit more time on my hands, and I just listened to this repeatedly, and and again, I think talking about moments and experiences, listen to an album non-stop, however you do it. You can listen to it all the time on the NAF headphones, less NAF headphones now because they're really good. But you can listen to music, and but when you see it live, again, it sounds a bit like cliche, but I saw them play the iTunes Festival at this tiny venue just off Marble Arch. Then I also saw them play Glastonbury in 2007, I think it was. And again, I remember singing. I remember some of my mates didn't want to go to the editor, so I went on my own and just stood there and sang word for word, back at them, at Glastonbury. And again, I think it's because of that I get instantly taken back to a sunny field in Glastonbury, just me completely live, like I was the only person. I thought I was the only person there. Of course I wasn't, but it's what makes music makes you feel, And I think the end has a start is I think, yeah, I think because I was in that weird, again, maybe I'm getting too deep here, but I was in that weird time in my life where I didn't quite know what was happening next. And that was just before I got my first job in football. So, like, it was the end of my sort of messing around, you know, not wasting my years, but, going to uni, not quite sure what to do and stuff like that. So, yeah, it just chimes. And again, it's a band I listen to a lot, my Spotify, what do they call it at the end of the year? What do they call it?
Wrapped, is
Spotify
it?
Wrapped. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of the same bands and the bands I'm talking about now.
But are they still going though? Are they still making albums?
They did, yeah. They played, yeah. They did, and there were a couple of good songs. Papillon was on the third or fourth album, I think it was, and yeah, there's Sugar. I think it was on a couple of eight. But yeah, I think certainly for me, the first two albums resonated massively, and um, yeah, I would again. I think probably unfairly labelled, and I think musically and lyrically yeah, they were quite intense as well, weren't they? I know that probably I've heard some people say that bit Joy Division wannabes or something like that. Now, yeah, I mean if that's what people think, that's fine because also Joy Division were really fucking good, so it doesn't really matter, does
No, yeah,
it?
there's a fine line in there between like
Yeah. Yeah.
you can sound like it if you're good. You can sound
Yeah,
like a
it's
band, but if
fine.
it's good, it's good. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. In the same way that every article or every story that we tell in Mundial, whether that be our podcast, right? Someone would have probably told that story before in a different way, but we're just telling it in our style. There's only so much. There's loads of stuff, but there's only so much stuff in the world that you are gonna just end up eventually just repeating things, but in a better way and more relevant way.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well here it is. Here's Editors with An End Has a Start. And then to a band that I've been listening to a fair bit recently because we had I forgot his name momentarily. Yeah, we had Lucas on the podcast from Maximo Park.
Yeah.
So did a bit of a deep dive into their catalogue and yeah, some great songs. And you forget how big they were, but they were massive at that point.
They were they were massive, and the reason I've selected this song is because it was the first Maximo Park song I'd heard, and it made me think I've got to go and see these live. The first time I saw them live was part of and I tried to check this out, but I couldn't. There was a festival called London Calling in Amsterdam, which I went 2 years in a row. Now I
Oh,
don't know if Maximo Park played the exact London Calling or they played the night after in Amsterdam. I can't quite remember. Anyway, I saw them for the first time live. Amazing. And then I had we just, Paul Smith was just walking out like normal, at the end. And I think because they were a newish band for then. And I think it's a lot of people, Dutch people came along and probably saw it and went, yeah, great, nice band and stuff, but didn't quite know. And me and my mate and his then girlfriend, who's they're now husband and wife, we stopped him and chatted to him he chatted to us as much as anything for a good half an hour. And I just thought, I'm not just not, I just thought it was so nice that he was so nice because I
yeah.
just, I think we had this thing, especially around then as well. You had like, don't get me wrong, Libertines and stuff like that when they were doing all the really dingy, small gigs, intimate gigs and stuff like that. But around then, you were getting bands that weren't like putting gigs on, but then weren't turning up and stuff like that. And I just found that mental. I just found that so bizarre, and I just found that wrong. And I just thought it was around that time, and I was buying NME still around that time because it was still going, and we sent the picture in of us with him to NME. It was in the spotted section, and again, I think it's just listen to Maximo Park. I'm taken back to that, or the one time I can say I was in the NME because there's a picture of me and Paul Smith.
That's it. Yeah.
So yeah, I could have picked plenty of songs for them, and I think they're and again, this is probably a bit of a hit for them, I'd argue, but yeah, it's still it again, it gets you going, and That's I think that was the energy around them and music around then that time. Similar times I'm going to watch Rakes quite a lot as well. The energy and the excitement around that. Obviously different sounds, but that was it made yeah, it made me reminded me why I loved music again. Sounds cliche, and I'm not just using that to show on the name of my podcast in, but yeah, those 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008 was a lot. I went to a lot more gigs then than I think I ever did.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Okay, well here it is. Here's Maximo Park with Apply Some Pressure. Then the next band isn't it's one that I've never really got into, so I'm interested in as why you've picked them, the Cortinas.
Yes, and I realized this when I listened back to a few episodes, and I was like, right, again, there's a story behind this. And again, who knows? Is this if this is interesting? Well, maybe it is interesting to me, and hopefully I can try and portray why it is and why. London Calling, Cortinas were playing one of the nights, and the second year I went with my then girlfriend, and it was during this song. I think I'd gone to the bar or something. I couldn't find them, and I was like, "Oh bloody, hell, I've lost them," And I think my phone had run out of battery, so I was worried I wasn't going to find any. I wasn't going to find my mates and stuff like that, and crucially, my fairly recent girlfriend. It was our first proper trip away, and this song came on, and I was like, right, I'm just have to go straight to the front, and I went to the front, and she was there at the front dancing to this. So it means a lot to me now. Whether that means oh god, and I do understand, and again, maybe with hindsight, what the Cortinas and their gigs have become. Like I went to a gig at Brixton Academy, and I've never seen anyone light a flare indoors before, which was insane because they had said beforehand, if anyone does a flare, we will go straight off. And to be fair to Thingy, they did as soon as it went off, you know. And again, we've all done silly things when we're youngish or when we've had too much drink. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to be all pious about it, but it was a bit like they became very different. It became a different type of gig and different types of gigs. But we saw them, and funny enough, the week before we got married, we saw them play some random hard rock cafe gig. I don't even know what it was for. And again, we met Liam afterwards, and he was properly sound. Made a point of getting an extra set list for us and signed it and said, "Good luck on for your wedding and stuff like that." And yeah, uh, again, it doesn't. Yeah, again, it just means something. And I think, and again, the joyfulness of the songs when they first came out, certainly the first two albums, that made me really like them. And I think again, they've obviously come under a bit of flack, for maybe being one of the ringleaders, shall we say, of the landfill category, so to speak. And yeah, okay, I get it. It's quite it's easy going. It doesn't, but all the stories chime with me and resonate with me. And I think he just seems he just seems like, oh well, I know he is because we met him afterwards and met him once. And you usually get a sense. I've met a lot of footballers and famous people within football or around football or through football, and you get a sense pretty quickly whether someone's sound or not, or maybe they're just having a bad day sometimes. But most of the time, it's pretty obvious that who are the good people. And to me, he seems like one of the good people, and he absolutely loves his football. So yeah, that also puts a tick in the box for me. So yeah, I get it, and I understand musically why it might not necessarily always chime with everyone. But like I said before, they still sell out pretty big venues, don't they? And they still do pretty
Yeah.
good concerts. So
I mean, they sell out the cricket
yeah,
ground up here every time they
yeah,
play, don't they?
exactly. Yeah, but like I said, horses for courses and all that. But it's certainly. Which one did I pick for this?
You picked What Took You So Long?
Yeah, it was that. So yeah, that was the song, and it was bizarre, and it was just like at that point that I thought, yeah, maybe this girl is the one. To sound cheesy, but it was true, and remember saying it the next day to my mate. So Yeah. So if people don't like it, fine. But yeah, they can't have a go at me for liking the song because it did change my life. We're still together, me and my wife, and we've got a daughter. So yeah, yeah, it's an important song for me. So yeah, give it a
Yeah,
chance
yeah.
if you haven't given it a chance.
I can't argue with that caveat, really. Okay, so here it is. Here's Cortinas with What Took You So Long. And then, yeah,
I
next
realise
band,
I'm
obviously.
waffling, by the way. If you want me to
No,
speed
no,
up,
it's
yeah, yeah,
brilliant. It's
yeah,
all good, mate.
yeah.
Yeah. Next band, obviously, brilliant band. But it's interesting that you've chosen a song off. Is this a second album for Block Party?
Yeah,
Still remember, yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah,
why this
yeah, yeah,
particular
exactly.
song?
I
Yeah.
think you know what I like about this is touching a little bit on what I said before. Sometimes music that I like, cigarettes and alcohol, is probably the theme song of that generation and probably some, the lad culture, so to speak. But what I love about this song is it's to me, well, certainly to me, it's a love song, which I think, and you can just the lyrics and the way it's delivered, you can just picture yourself in every scenario that he's talking about, being in the park and he's talking about, leaving school and stuff like that early and sitting in the park with this person. So I think for me, that's why it's so good. And I think again, I tried to be a bit different because I knew that probably people would pick songs from the first album, which is incredible, and I can't wait to see them. They're playing Crystal Palace in the summer,
You go
so
into that, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I have seen them, but in passing or whether they were supporting or not properly, And I think I listen, I listened to a remix album of theirs the other day. I can't remember the name. Apologies. But even then, their music's just yeah, it's just excellent. It's just they were just excellent, excellent band. And yeah, like I said, the difficult second album. I've picked a few out songs from second albums here, but I often find the gateway. The first album was maybe the gateway drug, and this was the one that got me hooked to the rest of Block Party. But yeah, and I just like the fact that it's a love song told with guitars, in a slightly different way. But it's a beautiful, beautiful song. And I speak to James, who's one of the main guys at MUNDIAL, and I've worked with for 5, 6 years, and we have a big mutual respect and admiration for Block Party. And quite often, one of the songs from this or the first album we'll just suddenly go, can you remember how good this was? So yeah, that's why I'm looking forward to seeing them in the summer.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Well, here it is. His Block Party with I Still Remember. Yeah, Hives are supporting at that gig, aren't they? Is
Are
that right?
they?
I think so, yeah.
Blimey, they seem to be support. I went to Arctic Monkeys in the summer and
Yeah,
they were
yeah.
supporting them. Where else were they supporting? Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
They're not,
yeah.
do you know what? I'm not that bothered.
I know what you mean.
I'm not that. I don't know if it's the suits that put me off because I hate suits. I know. Again, this is probably a silly reason to I, and I think with all these bands that we talked about and we'll talk about is, that said, I never had the block. James showed me a picture of him the other day, and I was like, "You look like you look like you're the bassist in Block Party in that picture." And I never had that look, maybe because I was a little bit older. But yeah, most of these bands and yeah, it's the suits. I can't get my head around.
Yeah, I
But
think
they were,
some of it,
they
it's just
were,
some bands are more of the time than others, aren't they?
yeah, yeah, exactly. Oh, I mean, yeah, that time NME, obviously not what some would consider the golden years, of NME, but still was an important magazine for different reasons. And yeah, like I said, me being an enemy with a picture of Paul Smith is well, I've still got it. It's in the garage somewhere for sure. So yeah, it's
Yes.
what's the next one? I've forgotten now.
Yeah, next one's Kasabian because they're a band that I often come back to because they're never one that I was big into, but I do love some of the songs and some of the live performances are
Yeah,
pretty great when you see them on YouTube. Did you go to see them back in the day?
yeah, yeah. And this is why I picked one from the first album. I remember when this came out. Was it 2004?
Yeah, around then,
Yeah, it
yeah, four or
was around
five, yeah.
then. I remember when this comes out, and this to me felt like the closest thing to Stone Roses and Happy Mondays that I'd heard. that sort of dancey element to it, that sort of, you know, strong front man. I'm not for a second saying the Kasabians' lyrics were anything like Shaun Ryder, but musically, it felt to me like this was an album that the Stone Roses or Happy Mondays would have made if they were still going around that time. And I just remember being like, I've enjoyed, I've always been guitar music focused, shall we say. However, like the dance and guitar crossover, from Noel Gallagher doing Setting Sun with Chemical Brothers to all manner of things, oh God, going all the way back and revisiting and learning and listening to New Order, not just World in Motion because it's an amazing song. But I've always enjoyed that. And I felt like they captured, certainly with the first album, they captured that sort of danceability. Is that if that's even a word? And they were, and the gigs. I remember going to see them at Liverpool Academy when I got the train from Manchester. Um, then I saw them play the Astoria. I actually missed V Festival. It was a warm-up gig for V Festival, and I missed V Festival because and this was another reason why I chose it because I'm pretty sure it was one of the songs that I would have. I very rarely crowd surfed. I'm too big. I'm 6'4". No one
All
wants
right.
me going over their heads. Certainly not after 8 pints of Stella and giddy as anything listening to music. But I crowd surfed at that gig at the Astoria, and I woke up the next morning and I'd broken three. It turns out I'd broken three of my ribs, so I
Blimey.
couldn't move, walk, or laugh, or go to the toilet without severe pain. So
How did that happen? Did you fall down at the end or something?
can I be brutally honest? I have no recollection of it. I woke up the next day and went, "Oh, I had no idea I'd done it," and I'd had a great time at the gig. Obviously, almost too good. But yeah, I must have injured myself, or someone probably. Yeah, I don't remember how I did it, but I did it, and yeah, God, it was a good like 3 weeks of chiropractor to make me vaguely normal again. But so I did miss Kasabian them because it was their warm up gig for V Festival. I saw them play.
What year was that out of interest? 2005? Because we went to.
2006-ish,
Ah, okay.
2007, maybe 2000. No, it can't be 2005 because I was in London. So 2006, 2007.
Ah, okay. Because me
Um,
and my mate ended up going to the festival that year. We won tickets. It was quite
yeah.
funny. Because
Oh, did
Oasis
you?
headlined, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Every time I saw them, they were brilliant. They were brilliant. Uh, and they were as close to any band that I'd seen since Oasis to get people to sing along and dance. Oasis, you didn't necessarily dance or jumped, but you probably jumped certainly. But they were as close as any band that I've been to that got people moving and I saw them Glastonbury. There might have been 2007, and it was before like people let off flares at that. Well, one of the earlier, nowadays flares go off all the time at music gigs and it looks fucking brilliant and I love it. I think it's very, I think it's great. I think there should be more flares in football, but that's for another podcast. Um, but yeah, I remember the Kasabian Friday night, that Friday night buzz at Glastonbury, and then watching them. I think they were on before the Arctic Monkeys, or Arctic Monkeys were on a bit later on. I know which one I preferred that night, and it was Kasabian. And to go back to the visuals, the visuals around the first album, it's a revolutionary soldier of some description, but could easily be an Italian ultra with a flare in his hand. I think I may have even looked at getting some Yeovil Kasabian t-shirts done where the scarf across the face was green and white, but fortunately for everyone's sake, and including my my decency looking back, I didn't get that done. But again, the visuals and the blocky font, it was very much of its time, but very much for me.
Okay, cool. Well, here's Kasabian with ID. Was that? I just got a recollection of that song being a Football Factory as well, I think.
I think it was. I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And I actually think one of the bands I'm going to talk about next, Boxer Rebellion, was on Football Factory as well.
Okay, yeah.
Well,
Well,
certainly on the soundtrack. That's why I didn't choose that song because, yeah, the Watermelon, I think it is on the Football Factory soundtrack.
Okay. Well, let's make that segue then. A band I don't
Yeah.
know too much about, to be fair, Boxer Rebellion, but a few people have talked about them, yeah.
Yeah, I've cards on the table. Did I know much about them until I played in a five-a-side match against the between Yeovil fanzine and the Southend fanzine? No. Happened to be the goalie was the drummer. And then so the next thing I did was get the album on the Monday. Um, because he was dead sound as well, and I thought I sod it, Had no idea what to expect. And then yeah, I, the energy again, little bit of music in there, certainly the first couple of albums, little bit of the music in there, a little bit of Kasabian, an incredible voice for lead singer. Not quite as incredible as the one that I'm going to select in a bit, because he will always be, James from Pure Essence will always be the best singer or my favorite singer of all the bands ever, ever. But an incredible singer and some great songs. And this was really like earthy, the first album. They went on to do a lot of different types of things, but again, because they were so good musically, still good. The Union Still was the second album, I think, and that was excellent. But yeah, um, and yeah, I've managed to get a couple of and that contact. We kept in touch. We still speak on social media, me and Piers. And yeah, I just feel like another band, and the reason I selected them was probably, like you said, not many people would have heard of them. But I think they're worthy of investigating. And this is certainly the best song that sums up their first album. But I also think they're band worth persevering with, because I think they've got great depth and variety as well. So, and they're still, I think they are doing some gigs very soon. Or maybe they've already done them. I can't remember. But yeah, they're a really good band and a great name as well. Some China uprising in medieval China, I think, or something like that. So yeah,
Okay.
any band that names itself after that is yeah. Yeah, you can go too far the other way, don't get me wrong, but maybe that is too far the other way. It's so good, but yeah. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, here they are. Here's the Boxer Rebellion with Flight. And then, yeah, next band, Hope Estates. I was really talking about them quite a bit with two video directors who knew them and did videos for them, and then went on to do videos for the likes of Block Party and The Rake. So,
Yeah.
BAY, why
Well,
this
I
particular
mean,
song? Because they more like in with like Star Sailor and that type of
a little
band.
bit. Second album, I would argue. Again, the first album is really earthy. I don't know. I would make a terrible NME journalist. I keep using the same word. But no, I think the first album was punchier. Um, but again, a band I didn't see live, because I was due to see them at some festival, and I tried to find this out. I couldn't find it out because I was doing a bit of research, and they either split up then, or they were on the verge of splitting up and they didn't perform, And I remember being really gutted, going, they were like the key things. I wanted to see them live. Um, but yeah, I think this one, which one did I pick? Left, was it, off the
Yeah.
second album, which, yes, is a slightly lighter in tone and shade. But I picked this one because it's got a bit of strings in it and a bit of light orchestra in it, which I think I've always enjoyed in guitar music. The juxtaposition, um, Embrace did it a few times early on as well. Were you good people? God, I must have listened to that song a million times. The Good Will Out had orchestra and strings on it, which is my favorite Embrace album. Again, because it was of its time, 97. I remember, but I had their first ever single, "Or You Good People," of Fierce Panda, and I remember going specifically to the record shop and requesting it like 2 weeks before, because there was this talk they were going to be the next big thing. They've obviously done very well. They probably haven't done as well as maybe what people thought they would, in terms of people were looking for like the next Oasis or something like that. But yeah, I think it's very similar to that. It's very similar to that sort of feel. But yeah, the strings are great, and I think there's, yeah, more strings in indie songs. So yeah, not all the time. There's got to be, but it's a nice one. And yeah, I think it's another band. Again, I wanted to highlight another band that maybe people haven't necessarily listened to or heard of before. And yeah, I mean, in this day and age, listening to Spotify maybe isn't going to help the royalties or the check that they might get through. But yeah, I think they were good. And again, the visuals and the identities of the covers and stuff like that, they were certainly the second album, the big bright reds and creams and stuff like that. Yeah, I enjoyed it, and it felt like they had a song called "Industry," which was also had a bit of had a political purpose to it, and I think it was a time you don't get that very often. A band that, I mean, obviously, Manic Street Preachers are the light throughout the whole of my music journey that sing about politics or sing about things that fucking matter. And I think Industry and songs like that, they were songs that mattered, especially in that must have been the same around the similar time that the banks were closing and the world was going mental. So yeah, that was another reason why I liked them as well. It was a shame that they shone too briefly, in my opinion.
Okay, well, here they are. Here's Hope of the States with Left. And then nearly missed them out. But song that Alan McGee called, he said it was as good as any rock and roll song ever. Fuck Forever by Baby Shambles.
Yeah,
So what are your memories of
just
this?
I kind of I maybe alluded to it before. Liberty, I kind of missed. I don't know if it was the kind of missed or didn't hang on to the Libertines thing as much as obviously loads of people did. And I think it might, yeah, I don't know why, but maybe it was the carnage. I don't mind a bit of fun and a bit of carnage every now and then, but I think it was just the endless carnage, and I think the druggy side of thing as well. I'm not, I'll drink a lot of beer. Don't get me wrong, and I'll have a lot of Canterstella or whatever, and I still do. But I don't know. I never really warmed to it until yeah, and until Baby Shambles came out, and there's obviously a stupid. It's the song called "We're Fucking It," and it's like this should be crap, but I think it's absolutely brilliant. And I think that song for me, if anyone says Pete Doherty to me, Pete Doherty, that is the song that I think of. I'm not saying whether you agree, and obviously there's been some brilliant stuff recently, certainly the Louis Theroux, which everyone should watch. The man's been through so much, self-inflicted, whatever you think, otherwise, whatever. The man's been through so much, but was able to, in amongst all that absolute madness, write something as concise but also brilliant as this. And I have this on more than I should do when I've got a young daughter. Well, she's 11 now, but I've been told off more than once for having this song on the radio, and it allows me to just feel like I'm 20, 26, 27 again. And yeah, I think it's it's fun. It's a lot of fun, and it's musically it might have a silly title and it might have a swear word in it, but I sometimes sometimes those we don't give a monkeys. We'll swear on our podcast and we'll swear in the magazine, not just because we think it's cool, but sometimes you need to swear. And I think, yeah, at this point in his life, Pete Doherty needed to swear, and it's great. I love it, and I don't think I'll tire of listening to it, no matter how many times my daughter tells me to turn it down. And why are they swearing? You tell me off for swearing.
No, I agree. I think it does really capture what it was all about at that time. And like the idea of the lyrics he explained was like, yeah, fuck forever, fuck tomorrow kind of thing. And that kind of really
Yeah,
sums it up. And it's a brilliant song, yeah. I
yeah,
think
yeah. It is. It really, yeah. Oh God, it really is. It really is good. And probably, I don't know. I might be wrong here. You might know better than me, but I don't think it gets the credit for how good it is musically because of people where we just go, anyway, the Baby Shambles stuff gets a little bit of a rough press, I think. I actually saw them play Brixton, and I remember it being like I'd seen a lot of gigs and I'd seen a lot of people go mad at gigs, and I'd been at Oasis Kasabian and people going mad, but there was an air of menace, just enough, just no, not too much for it to overspill and be, but there was an air of menace because it was.
Was this
And
when he started scrapping on stage? Was that the time?
no, he did.
Mm.
No, he didn't. He didn't. But there was just an air of men, even in the crowd, amongst the crowd at Brixton Academy. You know, the big slopes.
Mm.
I love Brixton Academy. I think it's great that it's back open, or it's going to be back open, because I think it's one of the best venues in London. And yeah, I just remember there being an air of menace in the crowd, but no point it turning into like a riot. It just felt there was a real energy about the place, and it was yeah, and I remember them, yeah, I remember them playing this, and it just being, you just lose yourself, and that's the best thing, isn't it? And that's the thing, when you just lose yourself completely and utterly in the music. And I think, yeah, uh, very few things in life can do that to you. Music, football, television. Those things can really take you away from and take you to a different place. And I think they certainly did it with this song.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, great. Well, here it is. His "Fuck Forever" by Baby Shambles. And then, yeah, the last band, I've never even heard of them. You mentioned them before. Pure Essence, is it?
Ah, you are in for a treat, sir. No, I get this a lot. People say to me, when people say, "What's your album?" or "What's your favorite band?" and the obvious answer, it's just easier to say Oasis or The Verve. Those are the first two. But I think Pure Essence have meant more to me personally, and their music has meant more to me across the time period than anyone else. Um, the songs and the start off. James from Pure Essence has got the best voice, the most iconic, unique voice, I think, in my opinion, in indie music. Not just indie music. I've heard him sing. He does this version of Bright Eyes from Watership Down, which is incredible. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but it's brilliant. That's a B-side, long, long time on from some of the stuff I'm talking about now. But I just think so the song I've chosen is Walking Dead off their third album. And I was in Manchester at the time, and I remember being so excited and seeing fire posters around Oxford Road, where I was at uni at the time, with the Walking Dead logo and Pure Essence poster, and being so excited. And it felt like they really were going to get the success and the critical acclaim that I always felt that they deserved. They're such a well-respected band. I tell you, I've seen them so many times, but at least 4 or 5 of those times, Manny from the Stone Roses has been there. I think, he's from Failsworth. They're from Failsworth in Manchester. I don't think it's just because, he's in this video for Walking Dead, I think, with Bez as well. So there's a real Manchester sound to them, but an incredible voice, an incredible set of lyrics, and the full spectrum to, like, really the first couple of albums. There's some really dark, I would say, yeah, dark songs and themes, and real, like, where the guitars just take you to a completely different place, and then the voice, it's almost like a wail, but in a good way. Uh, it's just brilliant. And then they kept going, and they did get softer, and in their in their latter years, like everyone does, uh, and but they just announced, and then they split up, and then they announced I think they did like 6 albums, and they toured it. They worked harder than anyone, and they didn't get the success they deserved. They could have been like Dove's Elbow, those sort of bands. I would probably bracket them in. They could have been as big as them, and should have been as big as them, but they didn't quite happen. And then, but they're coming back. They've got a gig in Manchester, and it sold out within, like, obviously playing to the converted in Manchester, where they're from, but where they had a great base. But yeah, they're coming back, and I genuinely, people go on about reunions and returns and gigs and stuff like that. Cannot wait for that day when listening to Pure Essence again and live. His voice is even better live, and I think that's the thing I love them even more than the music and everything like that. Live, and I've seen him in everything from a back door, back room of a pub in Oldham, to the Manchester Academy, to London. Those, big-ish venues, but not massive venues. And every single time I see them, he just bewitches you. and you just almost dumbstruck with the lyrics, but then they're backed up by an amazing sound. So I actually don't think I picked this song purely because I was this is my OCD, but you said 2000, oh, your podcast is 2001 to 2008. Either side of those things, there are some incredible songs, but this is the first song off their third album. I was in Manchester at the time, saw them do a homecoming gig. It was incredible. And for the life of me, every single time I listen to it, I cannot believe that the makers and producers of The Walking Dead didn't hear that and go, this is a fucking incredible theme tune. And then maybe that more people would have heard of them and maybe more they would have got, success or off the back of it. But I jest, but you know what I mean? It's just a brilliant song. And it's a great video. It's got Bez Manny, all sorts of people of them driving around Manchester at the time that I'd just moved to Manchester. So again, personal connection and personal link. But yeah, a band that I think people should give of all the bands that we've spoken about, if you're going to go and listen to one band, I would listen to them.
Okay, great. Well, here they are. Here's Pure Essence with Walking Dead. All right, cheers, Seb. That's brilliant. Absolutely ideal.
No worries, no worries. Sorry, I waffled on.
No, spot on, mate.
I can't. Do you know what? It's because it's not football, and I'm talking about something other than football, and it's quite nice because I talk about football all the time and do talk about football all the time, so it's quite nice to, yeah. But yeah, that was good fun. Enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Enjoyed it.
Where are they playing in Manchester, that band, out of interest?
Uh, they are playing. Is it the Albert Hall?
Okay, great venue, yeah.
So the day before, me and Tommy are going to see Mannix and Suede
All right, cool.
in Wales, in a castle in Wales.
All right.
It's a mad castle. Yeah, it's North Wales. So I'm gonna drive back with him, and then on that day, yeah, and it's. However, I didn't say it down on the podcast, but he tweeted recently or met on Instagram recently about he'd had a brain hemorrhage or something like that, and I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake, he's not gonna, you know, he's not gonna. Fine, by the way, if he can't do a gig because he's got a brain, that's different. But I'm like, he said it's all right, I'll be fine, and I'm like, really? Bloody hell!
Right, yeah, fair play.
But yeah, anyway.
Cool. Well, hopefully meet for a beer at some point if you were Tommy in Manchester anyway.
Yeah. Well, maybe. Yeah. If you're not doing anything that particular weekend, I would.
Yeah.
Because like I said, one of the bands. People say you got to see them live. You have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nah,
If you can see them live, you should see them live. But yeah.
Yeah.
All
Okay,
right.
nice one, mate. I'll give you a shout.
Yeah, just keep us posted, and we'll put it on the MUNDIAL channels and stuff like that because people, for some reason, like me, and so they're like maybe be nice for them to hear me not talking about football once.
Yeah. Spot on, yeah. Be a couple of weeks.
Yeah, fine. No, it's fine. All good.
Yeah.
All good. Nice one, Harry. I'm glad we got it sorted in the end. Appreciate your patience. Enjoy
No.
that.
Cheers, mate. Yeah.
Cheers.
Take care.